Hi, and welcome to this run-through video where we're going to look at some multiple choice questions published by the OCR exam board covering module 5, and it's 5.1 to 5.4. So this is everything to do with homeostasis, excretion, also neuronal communication and hormonal communication. Okay, so what you should do if you're just getting to this video is you should follow the link below, do the questions, and then mark them with me once you've finished. Or you can kind of pause the video at certain points, answer questions one at a time, and then see if you got it right. So let's get going. So the first question here is about a motor neuron. So which line summarizes the functions of the labeled parts? Well, let's first of all look at the labeled parts. Well, P, I think, it could be the nucleus or it could be the cell body. I guess it's the cell body, I think. Bit difficult to tell. Q is the myelin sheath. You really got to look exactly where the things are pointing. And R is the, the sort of the terminal, the sort of presynaptic bulb, I guess. Presynaptic bits. Okay, so what does each do? P is going to definitely not be acetylcholine release. It's going to be enzyme synthesis, one of those two. Q, is it going to be facilitating or preventing? This is going to be preventing ion movement. So it's looking like it's D, and let's just double check. Yeah, this is acetylcholine release just before the synapse. So the answer is D. All right, on we go. Oh, this is a horrible one. I remember this one. Okay, 2. Here is a diagram that is designed to, provoke terror in your heart, but just stay calm. The diagram shows some biochemical pathways in a liver cell, some of which are reversible. 5 reactions whose rate in a certain direction can be changed by the presence of a hormone are labeled 1 to 5. So the number close to the arrow shows the direction. So like number 1 is talking about this arrow, number 2 is talking about this arrow, 3 is this arrow, 4 is that arrow, and 5 is that arrow. Now the question is, which numbered reactions have their rate increased in the presence of insulin? So the first thing you have to remember is, what does insulin do? Well, insulin removes glucose from the bloodstream. So anything that stores away glucose, that's what insulin is going to trigger. So what things fit with that? Number 1, yes, that's taking glucose out of the blood into a cell. Number 2, yes, that's taking glucose and converting it into glycogen, a store of glucose. Now the other ones are a bit more difficult, so you might have already narrowed it down to either A or B. So now, is it 3 or is it 5? Well, 5, let's look over here, takes fatty acids and stores them as fats. So it's about making a store of energy, so that's potential. Whereas 3 is breaking down proteins into amino acids, which is more, that's the opposite. It's not storing something, it's breaking down. So it's not 3, and it is 5. So the answer, therefore, is B. That's a horrible question. Question 3. A sudden movement close to the eyes can cause a person to blink. Which line of the table summarizes the events involved in this response? Well, the receptor is going to be a photoreceptor, not a touch receptor. So that's the choice, photo or touch. It's a photoreceptor because you can see the object moving. If you wait till it touches your eye, it's too late. Type of reflex, this reflex is going to be a cranial reflex, and the effector is going to be the eyelid muscle. So it's this one. So you might, probably the trickiest part of that is the cranial versus spinal reflex, these two. Which one is it? A cranial reflex doesn't involve the spinal cord. So cranial reflex just goes into the part of the brain, I forget which part, but it goes into a certain part of the brain and then kind of, I think it's the pons, and then loops back down to the eyelid muscle, which closes. Whereas a spinal reflex involves the spinal cord, and that would be something like when you get hit on the knee and your leg kind of flicks up like that. So that's A. 4. Here's a skeletal muscle. There are 4,000 identical sarcomeres in the myofibril, and each one contracts until the myosin filaments are just touching the Z lines. Okay, so here's some maths. By how much will the whole myofibril shorten during contraction? Well, then, each one contracts until the myofilaments are just touching the Z line. So this is 0.4 micrometers. It's a 0.4 drop. Actually, I didn't need to do that, sorry. It's 4,000 times. Now, I see what's going on here. This is going to decrease, but so is this. Okay, so actually, each sarcomere is going to decrease by 0.8 because it's one over there and one over there. So 0.8 micrometers is going to give us our value, which is 3,200 micrometers, which is equal to 3.2 millimeters. Yep, and that is the right answer. That was a tricky one. I had to think for that one. Okay, moving on to number 5. Okay, glucose moves from the filtrate in the nephron into the bloodstream during normal kidney function. What part of the nephron allows this movement of glucose? So this is talking about the filtrate. So after it's gone through the glomerulus, the glomerular filtrate goes down the proximal convoluted tubule and then through the entire nephron. Which bit reabsorbs glucose? This is a factual recall. Hopefully you remember that it is the PCT that reabsorbs it. So let's just go straight to this one. Proximal convoluted tubule, and it is selective reabsorption. Those are both correct. Remember, normally there's 2 parts to it. We just must check they're both correct. So yeah, D. This one, C, is how the filtrate is created. It's kind of, they're both correct, but it's how it's created. Distal convoluted tubule, we don't really look at A level, and collecting duct, again, no, that's not right. It's passive reabsorption via osmosis of water that happens in the collecting duct. 6. A decrease in environmental temperature causes changes in the physiological functioning of the skin. This is complicated talk for basically what happens to the skin when it's cold outside. So, when it's cold outside, the arterioles sending blood to the skin are going to constrict to cut off blood supply going to the skin. So it's going to be one of these two. Erector pili muscles. These are the things that give you goosebumps. These are the things that make your hair stand up. You probably can't see the hair on my arm, but in really cold conditions, they stand up. Doesn't really do much, but it's a kind of response that used to do much when we had more hair, when we were sort of closer in appearance to chimpanzees than we are now. So those are going to contract, and sweat glands are going to decrease sweating because you don't want to sweat when it's really cold outside. So therefore, the answer is A. Moving on, 7. Homeostasis maintains optimum concentrations of chemicals in tissue fluid and blood plasma so that reactions can function optimally in the cell cytoplasm. Here's a diagram that shows the concentration of 3 different ions and of protein measured in 3 different constituents. Okay. So, and then we need to try and identify the constituents. Okay, well, the first thing I think to look at here is basically 1 and 2 are really similar, aren't they? They're almost exactly the same, apart from this. That is protein. So 1 and 2 are the same apart from protein. 3 is quite different. 3 is quite different. So what of these things could be quite similar? 1 and 2. Cytoplasm and blood plasma, tissue fluid. Okay, well, the 2 most similar out of those 3, cytoplasm, plasma, and tissue fluid, are probably going to be the plasma and the tissue fluid, okay? Because we're talking about things outside of cells versus things inside of cells. Remember the plasma and tissue fluid, the blood plasma becomes the tissue fluid, but some protein is kept within the blood vessel because it can't leak out across the basement membrane. So therefore, 2 and 3, 1 has got to be the blood plasma, there it is. 2 has got to be the tissue fluid, which is just sort of leaked out, but to take away the protein. And cytoplasm is the one which is the quite different one, 3. Remember, the cytoplasm, just going deeper into this for a second, the action of the sodium-potassium pump, pumps sodium out of the cell and pumps potassium in. So that's why there's, quite a lot of potassium inside the cell. This is the sodium-potassium pump there. So that's answer is B. Moving on. 8 and 9. 8. What will increase the secretion of antidiuretic hormone from the posterior pituitary gland? So this ADH hormone from the gland. Remember, ADH is released when the body needs to conserve water. So it makes the urine more concentrated and dark in colour. So if the external temperature decreased of the body, you'd be sweating less, so that's not a thing. If you drink a large volume of water, no, you're going to need to produce more urine, so that's not a thing. Injecting a concentrated salt solution with low water potential into the body. Now that sounds very dangerous to me, but yeah, it would make you produce ADH because you then need to keep more water to dilute all that salt. So yes. Injecting a dilute glucose solution with high water potential into the body, no, that wouldn't affect it. That would, if it's dilute with high water potential, it would make you pee more. So the answer is C. This is ridiculous. Why would you do these things? Don't do either of those things. Number 9. Looks like this is a long one. Okay, so let's take it. A glucose tolerance test can be used to investigate a person's ability to homeostatically adjust their blood glucose concentration. Concentration of the glucose in the blood plasma is measured before and after consuming 50 grams of glucose. So we have the fasting, and then we have 1 hour after eating. Okay. So here are 3 individuals on the graph. We've got to diagnose these people. Okay. So let's diagnose X first of all. So remember, we need to look at the fasting and then the 1 hour after eating for each of these people. So I'm just going to do different colours. Fasting 1 hour after eating and fasting 1 hour after eating. Okay. Okay, so let's first of all look at person X, which we go from about 180 up to about 370. So person X, oh wow, it's high, isn't it? Was that right? 180. Yeah, 180 up to about 370 for person X. That's really high. So that's definitely this one. Person X has definitely got diabetes. It's super high blood sugar. So X is definitely diabetes. You can already narrow it down. Now let's look at person Y. They go from 100 to about, I don't know, maybe 160 or something. The blue dots, 100 to 160. So, it's probably normal, I'd say. 100 to about 160, I think. So I think that person must be normal. Oh yeah, well, they're both normal. All right, now let's move on to the last one. And I'm guessing that it's probably hypoglycemia because it's going from 50 to about 110. So yeah, that's below 69 to 110. So yeah, that's hypoglycemia. So that is correct. So therefore, the answer is B. All right, question 10, halfway. Hepatocytes, those are liver cells, carry out a number of different functions. Which statement describes functions that occur in hepatocytes? Combining ammonia and carbon dioxide via the ornithine cycle. Yes, that happens in the liver. Storage of glycogens and some vitamins and minerals. Yes, that happens in the liver. Breakdown of drugs and alcohol. Yes, that happens in the liver. So, yeah, the answer is A, 1, 2, and 3. All of these things are done in the liver. Very, very useful organ indeed. Number 11. Neurons are electrically excitable cells that experience changes in the electrical potential difference across their membranes. Particular potential difference values or changes are identified by the terms resting potential, threshold potential, and action potential. Which statements are true of these? Action potential describes a rapid reversal in potential difference. Yes, that's true. So it quickly goes from negative to positive and then back again. Resting potential and threshold potential are both negative values. Yes, that's true. And statement 3, an action potential begins before threshold potential is reached. No, you would just change this to after. Once the polarization has gone above threshold, which I think is about minus 45 or minus 50, depending on which textbook you look at, then it fully depolarizes to make an action potential. So the answer is just 1 and 2 are correct. So 11 is B. Yep. Moving on. Okay, so this one. Which line of the table identifies a neuron that is at resting potential? Right, now this is a tricky one, so I think I'm going to have to draw a little diagram of it to kind of help me visualize it, which is a tactic that you can certainly use. All right, so this is my axon, and we've got things in it, haven't we? We've got the sodium NAK pump, and then we've got like ion channels and stuff. Okay. Now remember what happens at resting potential. At resting potential, the sodium-potassium pump pumps sodium out and potassium in. Okay? Some of the potassium can exit via K+ channels, contributing to the negative polarization because actually 3 sodiums go out for every 2 potassiums that come in. So this is why the inside is negatively charged. So what would we expect at resting potential? We'd expect the concentration of ions inside the neuron to be low sodium and high potassium. So that's this, low sodium and high potassium. What about the permeability? Well, it's quite permeable to K+, but not very permeable to Na+. So it's going to be here. And the sodium-potassium pump is constantly working. Okay, so the answer for 12 is D. Moving on to 13. The diagram shows the homeostatic control of glucose concentration in the blood. Which line of the table identifies W, X, and Y? Okay, so let's analyze. If we have an increase in blood glucose concentration, what hormone is secreted? That we know is insulin. It's easier than it looks. Complicated flow diagram to kind of baffle you, but it's actually fairly simple. We're down here. Right, what happens if blood glucose concentrations fall? Oh, sorry, here, then this is going to be glucagon. So that's this one. And the adrenal medulla, we know that one secretes adrenaline. So that's this one. Okay, so therefore the answer is D. A certain poison kills by causing paralysis of the breathing muscles. When the poison is present, the sarcomere of the neuromuscular junction cannot depolarize. Which could explain the action of this poison. Remember the sarcomere, you've just got a synapse that kind of joins onto a muscle instead of another nerve cell. So the sarcomere is this, the membrane on the outside of the muscle cell. Okay, which could explain the action of the poison? It could prevent the release of acetylcholine. That would stop it from depolarizing. It could block acetylcholine receptors on the sarcomere. Yes, that would stop it depolarizing. If it inhibited the action of acetylcholinesterase, it would cause overstimulation of the muscles. So it's not 3. 1 and 2 are both possibilities. and it's difficult to tell which way, exactly it works without further study, but it could be one or two. 15. Which statements are true of feedback systems in the body? Negative feedback acts to reverse a change. Yes, it does. Positive feedback amplifies a change. Negative undoes it. An example of negative feedback occurs when a high plasma concentration of a hormone inhibits further secretion of that hormone. Yes, that does fit the description of negative feedback. Positive feedback occurs during the generation of an action potential. Yes, because in some small depolarization, if it gets to a threshold, then causes a larger depolarization. So that is also a positive feedback kind of loop. So the answer, therefore, is 15A. 1, 2, and 3 are all correct. 16. Commercial uses of plant hormones. Okay, auxin powder is placed on the cut stems of plants to help them root. Yeah, that is true. So it's used as a rooting powder or rooting gel. Ethylene gas, ethylene and ethene are the same thing, is used to speed up ripening of bananas. Yes, that's true. And gibberellin is produced naturally by a seed during germination. That is also true. Aha, but is that a commercial use? Is this really what this question is about? So it could either be 1, 2, and 3 or just 1 and 2. They're both options. I think the question is asking us to do B, because this is not the commercial use, it's just a natural use. So it's really asking you, did you spot this word commercial here? Is that right? Yes, it is. It's 16B. What a horrible question. Sometimes they are horrible. Did you spot that sentence up there? 17. Different regions of the kidney nephron have different functions. Which line of the table identifies the region that absorbs the most water from the filtrate? Ooh, this is a tricky one. And the region that has receptors for the hormone ADH. Okay, well this bit's easy. Which one has receptors for the hormone ADH? That's the collecting duct. Oh well, that's taken us there. Okay, we've got there straight away. But yeah, I thought this might have thrown you. Yeah, this is true. It is actually the proximal convoluted tubule that absorbs most of the water. The final bit, the collecting duct, then also absorbs a lot of water. The extra that's still left. But actually, it is the PCT that absorbs most of the water. After we absorb glucose and amino acids, selective reabsorption, water moves as well. So the answer is 17D. Bet you didn't know that. 18. Motor neurons in the vagus nerve cause responses in the heart, lungs, and digestive organs. In which divisions of the nervous system can motor neurons of the vagus nerve be classified? Okay, well the vagus is part of the autonomic, and it's part of, peripheral, not the central. Okay, division 2 and 3 are mutually exclusive. You can't be part of the peripheral and the central. Central is the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral is everything else. So it is part of the autonomic, which is kind of like the automatic behind the scenes system, and it is part of the peripheral. So the answer is 1 and 2. 18 is B. Almost there. 19. A synapse is a junction between two neurons, the presynaptic and the postsynaptic. Which statements identify correct combinations of presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons at synapses? Okay, so it's just asking which is true, really. Okay, statement 1. A presynaptic sensory neuron synapses with a postsynaptic motor neuron. Okay, so this is basically just saying, can a sensory neuron connect straight to a motor neuron? No, it can't. There's got to be something in the middle. Can a relay neuron connect to a relay neuron? Yes, it actually can. Right? Relay neurons are found in the CNS. So in your brain, you have multiple relay neurons all kind of talking to each other. And statement 3, a presynaptic relay neuron, can it talk to, can it talk to a sensory neuron? I don't think so, but only two is not an option. You have to cheat and look at the answer. The answer, it says, oh, I got this one wrong. Okay, so the answer is B. Okay, the answer is B for this. Now, I'm not really sure why that is. I didn't really think that a sensory neuron could synapse direct to a motor neuron, but I must be wrong. I'm going to have to look it up. Maybe I'll drop a picture in right here. And my idea is I think that maybe in certain reflex arcs, maybe we can have a sensory neuron synapsing directly to a motor neuron. Maybe there's no relay neuron in the middle. It just goes straight from sensory to motor. Maybe. And then statement 3 is correct. Statement 2 statement 3 is incorrect, and statement 2 is correct. So yeah, the answer is B as an example, but hopefully that picture has clarified that. Finally, 20. The fight or flight response involves a large number of coordinated changes in the functioning of the body of a mammal. Which systems are involved in bringing about the fight or flight response? Is the autonomic nervous system? Yes. Okay, it's specifically the sympathetic part of it, connects to the to the adrenal glands, for example. The endocrine system, yes. And the cyclic AMP second messenger system. Yeah, adrenaline works by that system when it activates the responses inside the cell. So all of those things are involved, so therefore it's 20A. Okay, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.